Hey, hello. Ho, ho, ho. Welcome to Leaving Hillsong, leavers and believers. This is our special holiday Christmas Boxing Day. Actually, it's turning out to be a Boxing Day podcast. It's supposed to be a Christmas one, but the truth of the matter is I spent way too long on a reel. Way too long. But 11-year-old me just cannot get enough of how you can put the pictures with the words and the songs. It's just amazing. My name's Tanya. I am so happy that you are joining us for a different chit-chat kind of thing. Draps is with us today. Draps is Matthew Drapper. He is currently residing in the UK. And he's a friend of mine. He's a friend of this show's. He's a friend of Dorothy's. And we sat around and had a little review of some of the latest scandal and news. Because, we are talking about Hillsong here. And, yeah, things are getting a little bit more intense, a little bit more out in the open with the stress, the ripple effect of people who aren't alcoholics, but still seem to cause a lot of issues, have a lot of things that they'll talk about another day but then don't talk about. There's a bit of a lineup of people who can't wait to tell their story one day when they're able to, but then they kind of never do. So it's not necessarily a Christmas show, so Boxing Day will do. And if you don't have Boxing Day in your country, it's the day after Christmas, and it's got nothing to do with the Rocky movies. It's about, back in the day in British life, servants would have had to serve their masters on Christmas Day. And so the masters would give their servants a box of food and items and allow them to visit their own families the day after Christmas. We celebrate that class inequality by having a public holiday for it. So, hey, please keep Mariah Carey in your thoughts today. She makes $3 million every Christmas from not doing anything at all, but just because All I Want for Christmas Is You, her song, very popular. She just does nothing. It's her side hustle. And think of Draps. He grew up in a family that evolved into a quiverful family. If you've seen the show 17 Kids and Counting, that's the similar environment that my co-host and friend grew up in. He is one of 11 children because the premise of that kind of Christianity, along with its homeschooling and home births, you don't have a neonatal doctor because that would be evidence that you don't trust God. So throughout the pregnancy, you just have to hope for the best. You thought you were a fundamentalist. He's the author of 2 books, Bringing Me Back to Me, which is the story of Draps going to an evangelical church, having left home, and the experiences that he encountered there. And last Christmas, he put out his first fiction book called Lesser Light. A brilliant, call it like science fiction, thriller, church-based story of some young people who had experienced trauma in a church, and when they met up together again some years afterwards, are able to compare their stories and perceptions and, find out in a way that is familiar to a lot of us here what really happened. Check those books out. Personally, I like Boxing Day a lot more than Christmas because it means there's a full 364 days until that crushing pressure eventually drops on your head, which started a couple of months before when supermarkets started sneaking red and gold tinsely things, and so stressful. And truth is, a lot of people will be noticing the gap in their lives where church used to sit or their community used to be and hopefully we can kill an hour and a half. So like I said, it's not particularly Christmassy, this show, but I kind of had an argument with somebody on Sunday about how it was Friday, and then the schedule kind of got thrown out. So thanks for your patience, and I hope you enjoy our holiday gossip session, man drops. And I just realised I didn't explain the quiverful thing, and the insertion in this software is too hard, so I'm going to tell you now. The quiverful movement is based on the idea that large families are a blessing from God. And in Psalm 127 it says, like arrows in the hands of a warrior are sons born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their enemies in the gate. As for the daughters, or the sons born when you're a bit older, I mean, who even wants to know about them? They can go be with Job's children the first round, I guess. So anyway, a little bit of background on the differing upbringing of the man joining me today, because we've ended up with quite different approaches to, religion, the Bible, the whole shebang. There you go. Duggars they are not. Now let's get back to the gossip.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So clever.
Well, I'm tired of always being the person. Can't you go first?
Oh, hello, darling.
Hello.
Hello, I'm back. Me.
Oh,
It's me
where'd you go?
talking. I've been about. I've been here. I've been there. I've had a lot going on. A lot of behind the scenes, a lot of undercover. But we'll talk about that in the new year.
Yay! Yeah, I'm sitting on the edge of my chair, but we can't say a thing until January. But it'll be good times. Good times. You've been hard at work investigating matters, and you got a result. I've always wanted to have a podcast called The Sound of My Own Voice, because if we were to be honest, that's what every content creator is really there for.
Of course.
So I'm kind of, believe it or not, a little bit tired of mine. So can you take it from here?
I'm just happy to be with you for Christmas. Obviously, from the UK, you're in Australia, but Christmas is probably slightly different in each place.
Is it still snowing?
No, we already had our snow. We'll get it back in January. It's raining now.
Okay.
We have a rainy Christmas. What do you have, Sunny?
You don't get white Christmases every year then, huh?
Only in the movies, but that's something.
Well, how are you supposed to fall in love like Bridget Jones? Look, we thought, you and I, didn't we, that I've been chatting to a few people. We just thought we'd sit back and have a look back at the 2023 that was in Megachurch POV. There's been a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a year. It has seriously been a year. I think, the amount of work that people who've left churches have done over the past 5 years and the past 10 years feels like it's really kind of roller coastering into 2023 and 2024 in terms of just sheer volume of things that are being uncovered and people who feel enabled to speak out and to say this pastor, this pastor, this pastor, and I feel like we've just seen story after story after story break, and they all have the same kind of patterns in them, and they all come to a head in the same kind of ways. And it's like, we're going to do an investigation, and then the investigation happens, and then various results are found, and then the pastors just have a quick 3-month siesta, and then they pop back onto the scene, and they pitch their tents and they go again. But I do feel like it has been ramping up. This year has been on fast track.
And Mr. Drapper, I mean, you have a certain amount of expertise in this area in terms of lived experience, but in terms as well of investigating, researching other churches, safeguarding practices. You tell me more about what you do. I mean, tell us all, but do you think it's because there's so much more publicity now? It's not like the old days where you just, if you didn't get the newspaper, you missed the article. And so these places know that they have to get it right. I mean, is that it, or what do you think?
Well, I think it's a combination of the information age and really like the cracks that started to appear and have just grown bigger and bigger. And I think, because I mean, my experience has been in evangelical churches and in kind of hyper Christianity and kind of culty churches and things like that when I was younger. And then since leaving, I've just sort of always followed people and listened to people and dug into what's going on in the other evangelically, Pentecostally, kind of Holy Spirity kind of churches and mega churches. And I think so. If you think back to like 3 or 4 years ago, people still had so much religious trauma and religious, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fear of God and fear of the people like a bishop or an archbishop or a pastor or a mega pastor. And this fear and this respect was still so deeply ingrained that we were unable to really like get really dug in, but I think as the generation after us has grown up with like such a lack of respect, which is like a good thing because they realize people are just people, we're beginning to like really be able to tap these people and see all the cracks appear in a way we were probably far too frightened to do before.
I don't know if you're old enough to know what a pinball machine is, but kind of they bounce off each other. So when was we did that episode, remember, what was his name? Mike Pilavachi.
Pilavachi.
When was that? It was earlier on in the year. And I was quite surprised then because he's this preacher guy. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago that if a complainant were ever to be believed, it'd have to be a pretty serious, severe allegation, and there'd have to be, some kind of evidence before the pastor's door would even be opened. And Mike Pilavachi he run these youth camps. Refresh me again. What's it called?
Yeah, he was like the big like UK guy. He ran the Soul Survivor, it was called. It was kind of like the teens and 20s like big away weekends where people would do all the worship music and have the preaching and do all the purity culture stuff and have all the prayers. It was big into kind of like healing prayers and that sort of thing. And that was the one. And then in the summer, the news broke about abuse and that he'd potentially been massaging some of his interns. We don't really know exactly what went down because people have still only been able to kind of say little bits because of the investigations ongoing. But there was enough information, and I think for once people just immediately went, yes, this sounds right. Like, we can totally see this happening. And the people who normally would have kept quiet about it were actually able to say, yeah, I can identify with that. And I saw things myself. And I was, I'm not totally shocked by this information because of the whole culture. And they were able to criticize the culture as well as the person. And that, I think, helped as well.
Well, from some of those videos, little clips you sent me, where he was just degrading people and humiliating them on stage for no reason, for no good outcome. People are starting to see how a personality fits together, I guess. Hey,
I think so.
Abuse doesn't suddenly happen in isolation, in a vacuum. So, yeah, and again, that's he's been alleged to have sort of coerced his interns into giving him massages or receiving massages.
So that was what was alleged originally, and then the Church of England did like an internal review, and they came to the conclusion that Mike Pilavachi used his spiritual authority to control, and he controlled victims, and they said there were safeguarding concerns related to his leadership and ministry across 40 years. And this is also international because he traveled all the time and he took his interns with him like wherever he went and things like that. Somebody on Twitter, an amazing guy called James, posted a one of his blogs at the weekend, actually, which looked into who his interns were, and he managed to find 10 of the interns out of 20, of
Okay.
which they were all white men for some reason, and they were all, like, 7 of them were also the children of very influential people in, like, other influential pastors. But these were all people, according to how the money was spent, had just been picked by Mike for their leadership potential, and because God had said these are the right people to go with, and it just happened to be they were the children of
Mm.
other influential pastors, and it just happened to be they were all men, happened to be they were all white. I mean, like I say, he only found 10 out of the 20, but the pattern seems to be fairly strong.
Well,
These were an early 20s boys, really. And
my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So who are you to point fingers at what God has done? Because I think
if God told Mike, these are the people who are going to lead my people, then who are we to question that?
that's never exactly explained, because it used to happen a lot, back when there was a Hillsong and people wanted to do things. They'd never actually detailed the mechanisms God uses to let them know the names of the winners. But it's none of your concern either, I suppose. I'm layman like you.
I don't really understand how it works. I guess I don't know whether the name just comes to them, or if they pick it out of a hat, or if it's a bit, like, I don't know if you remember that old movie with the robot where, oh, that story's not really relevant. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's
I'm,
the
I'm
fly.
thinking
I always like to bring up the fly. Help me.
no, no, there was,
Well, I mean, does God still use a telex machine? Like, maybe he doesn't know how to email. Like, what email has he got?
I think the joke
Hi.
was, I think the joke with the robot was they were trying to see if the robot was human or not, as to whether he would laugh at a joke. And the joke was, I threw all my money up in the air and I said to God, "You keep what you want," and all the money came back down, so I kept it all. So maybe that's what they do with the names. They just throw the names in the air, and the ones that God lets fall back down again are the ones that they bring as their leaders. I don't know. I don't know how it works exactly.
The singing girl at Hillsong, Brooke, that did a great speech on that, where she was like, "Hey, don't look at me. Yeah, don't blame me. It's God who's making these decisions. So if you've turned up for 25 years and not been chosen for choir, it's nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
Keep trying harder, do better, and maybe God will choose you. Yeah, and maybe if you were whiter, but yeah, we'll see." So it's one of the kind of sickest, cruelest elements of that whole place, because they make those kinds of places, they make such huge promises and statements, and who was, is, and is to come, all of that alpha and omega stuff, but then they go, "Don't know, God did it."
Yeah,
That's it.
that's
Don't
how
spend.
it
How rude.
goes. I mean, for the UK, like, this has been a big one. This has been like the sort of one of two highlights of safeguarding in the UK, the sole survivor one. And it has amazed me that they've done an investigation, they found some results, and now they have now commissioned an actual KC, like a really serious investigator, to do a full investigation. But they have made the terms of reference to be just investigating Mike Pilavachi and not all the other bishops who enabled him, all of the churches who
Wow.
enabled
Okay.
him, all the people who enabled him. So there's been some complaints about, why they're not doing a more broad investigation. And the problem is, every time there's a broader investigation that looks at the reasons and not just, oh, a bad apple, they always seem to be shut down or disappear. So the second
Wow.
biggest kind of UK scandal this year was a board called the Independent Safeguarding Board, was set up by the Church of England to look
Okay.
at old cases and to kind of provide secondary opinions, and to kind of dig into what the National Safeguarding Board were doing and ask questions. And then, unfortunately, they did ask some questions, and then mysteriously, the Bishops' Council just shut them down earlier in the year. So there's been some wins in the UK, and there's been some losses, and that was a huge loss to us, and it's an ongoing story.
Oh, do you think perhaps that in the investigation of Pivalachi, other people will be necessarily named and detailed, and they don't need to, or
I think that the people, like, you know, Mike Pilavachi was given so much power because he was so successful, not because he had gone through Church of England training or had been particularly proven to be good at safeguarding or whatever else, just because he was extremely popular. So there's a lot of questions that should be asked about a lot of bishops and a lot of, you know, other people who enabled, which will, I don't think, be asked by this investigation, because they'll just be looking at the one person and try and like get rid of the one person instead of looking at the wider picture. But that's what we're here for. We're here to pick apart all of them. We can point fingers where they need pointing.
Oh, look, we have got endless fingers for just such an occasion. Really. It would sit hand. What would that Johnny Depp wouldn't point a better finger. But you know that, and I'm getting older and tireder, so I'm happy to just sit here and point. But there's been so much to point at. Please, you may as well now. I've been nagging a little bit. I missed the IHOP. There's an IHOP. I mean, what are these? Soul Survivor sounds like Soul Cycle to me. So I'm like, oh, Mike Pilavachi rides his bike at the gym. It's not, though.
No, but I want to know about the International House of Pancakes as much as anybody else.
So that's IHOP sounds like a kangaroo movie or an app or something. So I tuned out. Tell me what happened there. Plus, I was working 8,000 hours a week, but it was like another one. All right. Surprise, surprise. What happened?
Yeah, we didn't get to discuss this one at the time. It's been a busy kind of autumn time for, I think, both of us. Yeah, the International House of Prayer. I've not fully followed this story, but there was, what could it have been? Probably a sexual abuse scandal, I can only imagine. Was an allegation towards Mike Bickle. He's the founder of the House of Prayer. I think the House of Prayer, isn't that the big church that, like, what used to always be streaming prayer like 24/7 all the time, and they kind of were like encouraging people to have the prayer rooms and, you know, like all that? Was that them?
I thought it was literally pancakes. I've been believing you for all this time. How can you have an international house? That just, I can't. Sorry.
Beyonce has an international house. The House of Gaga is an international house, so you can have that.
True. I think there's coffee brand to some house, I suppose. All right, but Maxwell House, that's right. Why are so many houses with coffee? Anyway,
I think they were so obsessed with getting into the presence of God and bringing the presence of God into the world, which, you know, is not a bad thing to want to do. But what the bad issue is with this one is that their reaction in general has been, how dare somebody accuse somebody of doing something, and it's all gossip, and how could you possibly report on that, and how dare you discuss it? And, you know, they're saying like all these people on Twitter are like gossips and things like that, instead of actually saying what's actually going on.
It's got nothing to do with the abusive pastors and everything to do with those gossipy little serfs that attend the place. I mean, but seriously, International House of Prayer sounds like a cult. I just think
It is getting
one
cult.
room of silence and obedience to me, but IHOP is pretty cute. That sounds like, you know, was it, and very right now, was it a church or just a house of prayer?
It's a whole organization. Let me see if I can find the exact details.
And what went wrong? Usually nothing goes wrong in these styles of it's almost inevitable now, isn't it? The more we see, the more makes you wonder if it isn't everywhere or almost everywhere. What were they accused of in the IHOP?
I'm just trying to load the actual article. I didn't get it wrong. But I think it was one of those cases of it starts off with good intentions, and then one person gets more and more powerful and they become the leader. I think. Let me just get all of these ones don't work in the UK. It's like a cover up. Let me just get.
Do you know, they're like David.
International House of Prayer staff members stage a silent protest in the prayer room.
See, so much silence and prayer. I bet the chairs aren't comfortable either. Sorry, go.
because they were always live streaming. That's the thing. They were live streaming from the prayer room. And then I think some people had found out what had happened, and they put strips of red tape over their mouths with the word truth on it, and they staged a silent prayer. And this was because they were standing in solidarity with the survivors. So I think it was kind of getting a bit out of hand, in terms of the information was definitely getting out there.
So, sorry, was that streamed then, and people could see people with tape on their mouth?
Heaven Bent, they're the ones who have gone and looked into a lot of it. They're an investigative podcast. So I think they've probably got the details there.
So, I mean, were they filmed with the red tape on their mouth that said truth or something?
Yeah, they were in the prayer rooms like that. I mean, I've always wanted to do something as dramatic as that in terms of getting shown, but they actually did it. They did protest there because obviously, they wouldn't have been protesting for transparency if things were transparent in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, guys, know a lot more about the IHOP thing than I do. It's kind of flown past me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there's like a scandal every day, so it's quite hard to keep up.
And I'm sure I've told this one a few times before, but like my kids like, Mum, I get to hear this story once a year, but okay, tell it anyway. I remember when they opened the London franchise of Hillsong, and it was like, what's going to happen? Like, will it be different? Will it, and I remember this friend of mine saying to me, don't worry about it. It's the same system. It'll produce the same results. Just wait. And sadly, it absolutely does. You keep putting in those same ingredients and you're going to keep getting the same cake. Like the chocolate cake that Mike used to battle with in the fridge.
Scandal. It's such a scandal.
I mean, we have had, I don't want to jump into December too fast, but I tell you what, there's been a pretty decent bit of juicy scandal at the old Hillsong, just straight up soap opera stuff. They're not even like, didn't they? It's just drinks being thrown, and it's Melrose Place level of, throwing people in the pool and wrestling. Fantastic.
What new fresh scandal? What fresh scandal is going on?
We are so used to people disappearing. You're not allowed to ask after them. They're never seen again. And if anything does, the way the Houstons have always done things, which is we're fine. Nothing went wrong. Sorry. Okay, yeah, we were 5 minutes late, but, or some minor detail, and everything's fine. We're happy. You're happy. Everything's going ahead. Whereas, which is all very propaganda-y, and it's worked a treat. But we're so used to that kind of, deny, deflect, carry on, and hope that if anyone notices, they'll leave and get replaced with, someone else. So this is a biggie with the ugly divorce kind of looming ahead. Have I jumped ahead too far? Do we want to?
Are we talking about Sam Collier?
We are. We're talking about former Hillsong pastors Sam and Tony Collier, and I don't know if you remember, but the backslapping by self of the Hillsong board when this married couple became the pastors of Atlanta, because you know what? They were, they're black. Yeah, black. And the first black Hillsong pastors. And I think what year was that? 2020. So, I mean, hey, better almost dead than never, I suppose. But
So this was a little like when the royal family suddenly started having all their press appearances with black staffers or black members of the public suddenly after all the racism accusations. Because Hillsong was caught up in a racism row as well about they didn't have many people apart from white men on stage as per the cause.
Yeah, Emmy. So they're quite happy for non-white or people of colour, people to do everything else except, the best stuff, the main roles.
The on stage stuff, the powerful stuff.
Yeah, the publicity stuff. So they might, we've talked with Janice from God Has Not Given podcast on this topic as well. And yeah, I mean, she thought for a lot of time herself, they're happy to receive, again, it's like the LGBT issue. They're very, very happy to receive the community's money, the pink dollar, the pink hour. They'll take, days and days of their...
to run the carol service and to run it very, very well.
Oh, well, better than they could dream of. Well, Broadway standards. But yeah, not with, it reminds me of some of my relatives in South Africa. Don't know if I leave this in, but I've got one kind of distant cousin who was telling me one day, she was, extolling the wonders of the maid in her house that she'd grown up with and how they were basically best friends. And, she'd helped her to pick her prom dress or whatever the thing was. And, she broke up with a boyfriend. She could go and cry to this woman. And I said, oh, so like, did you ever have dinner with her at the table? And she looked at me and, why would I do that? So, it's almost more coercive, it's so passive. And I mean, again, God makes these kinds of decisions. And somewhere in about 2020, God was like, hang on, this place is a bit white. I've been looking.
So suddenly your name came down the pipeline. Is that what you're saying?
Well, whatever facts he uses, or like special courier that only tells the very high up. It's so preposterous and damaging to people to see, same old, no matter how, talented or hardworking someone might be, some pigs are just more equal than others. And so somewhere in 2020, I had seen as well on Instagram, the exploitation of somebody's skin color for the month of June, which is Black History Month in the US. It's vile. They just took photo. They were taking photo opportunity with Martin Luther King's daughter, but no other care given to civil rights in the US. And we know that, Carl Lentz said Black Lives Matter, and Carl Lentz's lives didn't matter anymore. So, it's as inauthentic. And the moment it becomes July, there's no more of those snaps. But God so it came to pass that in 2020, the Lord decided, Sam and Tony.
Hang on, grab a quick snack while we're researching.
Oh, no, go grab it. First black pastor of Hillsong Parks. Are we still?
I mean, it's remarkable that there was, a church. It should be newsworthy that there's a first black pastor in a church, because that shouldn't be newsworthy, but it is newsworthy because, the whole Pentecostal movement was started in equal rights churches from Azusa Street on, so the first falling of the Holy Spirit was absolutely surrounded by female black pastors, but now it's like so shocking for that to exist within that Pentecostal movement. And I mean, not the wider Pentecostal movement sort of worldwide, but the kind of the white evangelical Pentecostal movement. It is more shocking. But then, obviously, the standards are higher for these people, the stress is probably higher, and the expectations are higher. So as much as I take glee in the fall of any evangelical pastor, we have to also bear in mind, there's certain expectations around some people, and perhaps not as much glee as we perhaps could from the scandal of the story, which is scandalous anyway.
I don't know if I ever told you about Henry Shepherd, who I spoke to very early on because he printed some stuff online about the AOG in Adelaide in South Australia, and I got in contact with this, looked him up in the white pages, thanks, and gave him a call, and he helped. I was very sort of early in researching, about 2005, and he said to me, you can't trust one of the AOG pastors, not one. And I come on, do you know, there's got to be a couple of nice guys. There's some nice people in, and the more we go on, the more we find it's an actual pattern. It's a culture of behaviour, not just one coincidence after the other. Sorry. It didn't last too long. Start. It's been a fairly eventful few years for Sam and Tony. It hasn't just been being tokens for Brian and Bobby's virtue signalling. Okay.
I mean, that's though, to be suddenly dragged into the center of the Hillsong, like, publicity machine and all of that stuff, like, that is a whirlwind in itself. And they'd been married for, 5 years before that, if they met in 2015. So it was still fairly fresh at the time. And look, divorces happen, and there's absolutely no judgment from me on.
I mean, just before we got news. We have received a news that these two put up posts. I think he put his up, 10 minutes after hers or something. That they're not as happy as that, but it was 20. Hang on, sorry. 11.
Darling, I think we've lost all track of this story, and we may have to start the entire thing from the beginning. I know you have an AI editor, but I'm not sure how good it is. I don't know if it can edit around it.
There's a lot to it. So Hillsong send or select Sam and Tony Collier to run the Atlanta, Georgia church in 2021. And Tony explains to CBN online, I think one of the things I'm most excited about is that when people walk into the four walls of Hillsong Atlanta, they will feel Hillsong. I wonder what that feeling is. They will feel a family. They will feel united. And then, of course, they're going to feel Atlanta. It's going to be great. People are going to learn. They're going to grow. They're going to interface with new cultures. And it's going to be a beautiful thing. Tony Collier said in the end of 2020, the husband and wife team says the new journey will begin next year. We're not just dreaming about this. We are working towards this, Tony said. We're going to build this right here in Atlanta, and we just hope that you walk through our doors and you will feel that deep in your souls. And you also continue to hear the words, welcome home. Sam told the Christian Post that the mission of Hillsong is to reach and influence the world by building a large, Christ-centered, Bible-based church. Before. Prior to launching Hillsong Atlanta, Sam served at North Point Community Church in Atlanta. Tony has worked as a host and consultant with North Point Ministries. The Colliers recognise there might be some challenges opening Atlanta during a pandemic. They're looking forward to, and I quote, the uniqueness of the day. And I will just add this, that it comes up later. He says, I think the pandemic has caused us to question everything about how we do church. When your physical gatherings are pulled away, what does it mean to really be a church? Is it the physical body or is it relationships, discipleship and community? I think it's caused us to go back to basics. It's forced us to say, let's build this foundation right. Now, that was late 2020. They went ahead, opened a church, served their purpose, and then by 2020, within a year, was all over Red Rover. Let's have a look. before we get to the scandal.
You know me, I'm just here for the scandal, so, fill in the details, please.
Well, no, again, my voice is annoying me. I'll send you a link. Get them on the pod. They've left Hillsong. That's, perfect. Apparently that's not an option. But Sam, Tony, give us a yell if you want to come and tell your side of the story. All right, so they left Hillsong.
What we live for. The Hillsong is here for stories of people who left Hillsong, leaving Hillsong. It's in the title, and people love the stories. So that's really what we're here for. But you can't force anyone to come and tell their stories because there's so much in that. There's so much trauma in. There's so much PTSD, and there's so much kind of post-church stuff, and coming up to Christmas and dealing with it outside of the church is difficult. And there's so much going on that I think it's difficult for people to come and talk to you. But obviously everybody loves to hear people's stories on the pod, and I love doing these news stories with you, but ultimately the interviews with you used to do were so insightful and so fantastic, and I'm looking forward to more of those in 2024.
Yeah, I implore people to get in touch. I really hope that things have changed, that they've relaxed a little bit for people, a lot of people, and maybe they don't feel under such pressure that was there previously to not say anything at all. People evolve.
There's no category. You don't have to be an ex-Christian to come on leaving Hillsong. Absolutely not. And you don't have to
believers. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't even have to hate Hillsong. You just have to have left it and to be willing to tell your story. So Sam and Tony, do get in touch. We're looking forward to hearing from you, one or the other. Maybe together. Maybe you can be the marriage counselor.
At this point, I don't know if they're doing a lot together.
I see.
And I'm the big bad wolf. Okay. The 28th of March, 2022, People magazine. So we're talking, I don't know if it had been a full year. Let's have a look. Hillsong's first black pastor leaves church, saying his congregants don't trust leadership after scandals. Interesting, he threw that off onto Brian, you sneaky Sam. Hang on. The first black pastor of Hillsong Church announced he's cutting ties with the institution mere days after Brian resigned amid allegations of sexual misconduct. He launched a Hillsong Christian non-denominational chapter in Atlanta, announced his exit from the megachurch in an Instagram post on Friday, because that's brave. It is with great sadness that I'm... Yeah, do you know what I mean? Just run your own race. You don't have to face anyone. Just say things and stuff. It's with great sadness that I inform you of my departure from Hillsong. So I don't get it, right? Because 5 minutes ago, a year ago, she was talking about walking in the place and feeling this and feeling that. And yet, a year later, I've appreciated the Hillsong family and want to thank the Houstons for the love they have shown my wife and me. Well, thank you. At least somebody knows how to see my wife, Tony, and me, not Tony and I, which Brian did. The time, I wonder how they received that love. The Houstons aren't really known for a whole lot of love showing, but my greatest reason for stepping down as pastor of Hillsong Atlanta is probably not a secret to any of you. Psych! With all of the documentary scandals, articles, accusations, and the church's subsequent management of these attacks, it's become too difficult to lead and grow a young church in this environment. He cut his losses. That's smart. He concluded the message by sharing his belief that Hillsong Church would get through this storm and come out better than they were before. He ain't no Nostradamus. These colliers aren't sort of big predictors of the future, are they? I'm not going to submit their numbers this week. He said,
that like they took one look at Brian's fall from grace and his, at the time, the apparent potentially a sexual abuse of in the hotel room,
What?
and the scandal, the scandal around Brian
So,
Houston.
tell me what you mean when after the Prime Minister of Australia spoke at the Hillsong conference and Brian got really like proper top shelf smashed after
That's the
and
one.
lost his key. And there's only one key in a hotel, so he knocked on someone's door. I don't know if he's looking for the key or where's what he lost his way home. I don't know. But he ended up in that hotel room with someone for 40 minutes. But he can't.
We don't know what happened. We can't say, but we just know there was scandal around it, and Sam then was quick to say, we're out of here on that. We don't want any part of that scandal. And yet it seems like there's plenty of scandal brewing behind the scenes in their own life. So I wonder if some of that is looking at somebody else's fall from grace and going, well, I don't want that to happen to me.
Well, I mean, he's lovely. What he did say, I mean, after he said it's been, you know what I mean? Because he must have turned up and people said, oh, well, I'm the first black pastor. Yeah, of that Hillsong. Oh, wow. And then not long afterwards, is that the place where that guy lost his key in the hotel?
Mm-hmm.
And it probably got a little bit repetitive. He does say, I have no shame in admitting I cried like a baby moments after I informed the Hillsong pastor of my departure. And we all know that's because, he was waiting for a 16-ton weight to fall on his head when Brian presses the button. When that didn't happen, he must have sobbed that he got to have his life. But then, he's thanking the Houstons for the love they've shown my wife and me, and yet apparently they're not showing each other too much love. Can you outline the next round of goodness me, please?
So this is what's come out just in the last.
You are not going to believe it.
And listen, so there's a lot of elements to the story, but basically Sam has now announced, and he's in disbelief, that his wife is divorcing him.
Well, because she made a post, and then he made a post and deleted it, and was like, "Oh, what's everyone going to say?" Like in homeroom on Monday.
It was a very Instagram breakup because she suddenly drops on Instagram saying, I am in the middle of the hardest season of my life. I'm heartbroken, yet still hopeful. If you could see all the ways God has been kind to me and my kids, your jaw would be on the floor. After years of discovering and enduring repeated acts of infidelity, I have chosen to end my marriage with Sam. Despite of hope, attempts at reconciliation and counseling, after recently discovering more infidelity, I realized this wasn't a sustainable or God-honoring marriage anymore. I'm at the point where I have to say no more. I'm taking time off the stage and social media, apart from to post this Instagram post, to focus on healing with my kids. I have no desire to hurt Sam, but I do want to vigorously protect my heart and my children. Thank you for giving us privacy, apart from this Instagram post, to do that, and for prayers that will undoubtedly be felt. Love you all.
It's a bit
so this dropped infidelity.
I'm not praying for divorced people. They can forget my prayers. She's got to say infidelity 23 times, or there's no other reason you're allowed to leave a marriage, technically.
But I mean, obviously, divorced people, this is not the scandal. People get divorced all the time, and for good reason, because people can live better and happier lives apart than together sometimes, and that is just a fact. What I think scandalizes me about this is that he was so quick to throw Brian Houston under the bus over Brian Houston's infidelity scandal.
A year before, yeah.
And meanwhile, the fact is that if what she's saying is true, and we don't know 100% what's true and what's not true, but if what she's saying is that there was infidelity, and then there was counseling, and then there was time taken, then there was hope, and then there was more infidelity, we're not talking about a one-off dog walker situation. We're talking about, a pattern of infidelity. So this is a man who is potentially cheating on his wife, and
Potentially.
then going back to the pulpit, and then cheating on his wife again, and then going to the press and saying, I can't believe that Brian Houston would do such a thing, and then going back to his wife again, and then going to counseling. They think he said that they had like 700 hours of counseling or something. That can't be right.
Oh,
Let me go down.
no. Oh, tell me not.
It was a lot. Let me see if I can find eight.
Violate. But there's
Sorry,
like
I
a
don't think
bad
it's 700
pastor's
hours,
camp
but it
or
was a
something.
lot.
I don't think he got sent to bad pastor's camp or workshop or anything. It's just he's quite good at this, isn't he? I mean, he's Pentecostal plus with the whole I just couldn't keep going, trying to run this church. What was the filthy behaviour that's going on?
But I think, obviously going to counseling is the way to go. But he was counseling, obviously, as a pastor, I imagine he was counseling other people on their relationships,
Yeah.
and also standing at the front of the church and presumably sticking to the Hillsong assumed sexual assumption that A, it's wrong to be LGBT, and B, you must only have one partner in your life, and you must be sexually pure, and so on. I don't know what he was preaching, but I would assume, they said they were following the Hillsong values, and those are some of the Hillsong values.
Well, they wanted people to feel Hillsong, whatever that is, which I guess is like in deck or kind of you're eating a lot, but you're still really, that kind of stuff.
But I don't know if you've ever heard this before in a statement from somebody who has cheated on their wife at Hillsong. But there's the words unhealthy coping mechanisms that pop up very shortly after that. Is it a sleeping pill? We don't know.
That's been done. I mean, it could be,
find something fresh.
it could be gaming. Do you know what I mean? And in that sort of context, anything can be decided to be unhealthy. So, and it's a lovely way of just leaving the smoke behind for people to wonder what's going on. What was wrong with conscious uncoupling? And you make a statement together, we just ask for your privacy at this time, but we've come. No. Tony was having none of that.
Well, I understand Tony a little bit, because sometimes you get to a point where the only way to have accountability is to get it out in public. And I can understand that, to some degree. She was like, no more, none of this. I'm putting it on Instagram, and then I cannot back out of it, and neither can you. But there's a twist. Sam then pops up on Instagram within minutes.
Of course.
And he says,
mature leaders these people are. Yes, sorry.
They lead via Instagram, and obviously we need to not make assumptions about who's telling the truth in this story either, because he says,
was there reels involved? Because I think they should have done reels. Divorce. Sorry. Yes. Sorry.
They could have done a divorce reel. That would have been, a bit bolder perhaps than just putting it in text. I want to know what picture they used though, because you can't just post text, or maybe they did just post a screenshot of their notes app. I don't know, but I wish there'd be like a nice picture of a tree or like a shoe or something.
Where they could have used a carousel on stories that could have gone viral, and it's a whole marriage. Like, make the most of it when you get divorced. Sorry, people.
So Sam drops immediately onto Instagram, like he's popping onto Gossip Girl. Toni Collier is a liar and an abuser.
Oh.
It is documented that she has abused me our entire marriage and wants to continue to do so. I asked Toni not to do this. As well as our team and our lawyers, she is not divorcing me. We are divorcing each other. And I tried to divorce her 7 times, and she begged me to stay and kept abusing me. I will tell more of the story later.
There's a real lineup for later on stories. We've got Brian and Bobby. We're still waiting on Carl and Laura's Lent's book deal to eventually. I mean, we're What a guy. How do you try to divorce someone? Is that like attempted robbery, attempted divorce? Do you get in the car and change your mind? I mean, 7 times.
Well, I think it was Jesus that said you should not try to divorce your wife 7 times, but 70 times 7.
70 times 7. If she comes to you and then what you should definitely do is get on social media and call her a liar. And that's not gaslighty at all. I wish he'd been my pastor.
Well, he says it is documented that she has abused me our entire marriage.
By
So,
who?
I mean,
What?
if it's
By
been
his mother?
documented,
Like what?
yeah. Who's documented it? Why has it not become public in the past? Like, what's going on? Why is he's all for keeping it secret at this point? But if she is equal, in an equal pastoring position to him, then he has a responsibility, surely, to have made this public before. Like if if they were hired as a pastoring couple as opposed to she's the pastor's wife, then surely she's in a position, or is she just the pastor's wife?
She's the pastor's wife. So if he left, she left. Remember when that the whole of the US was like, what? They fired Laura Lentz, but she had her own job. Yeah. Yeah. So that's
so we don't know what happened inside that marriage, of course, but we do know that that they met just prior to her previous divorce, and they got married after 3 months of knowing each other. 2 months after her previous divorce. 3 months. 3 months of romance and a marriage.
That's a long Pentecostal time while you're courting, because you've got such a choice. You've got a choice of limited people, like, the people in this room, or and then what you waiting for, because you're going to be together forever, so you might as well get on with that.
3 months.
Common, I argue.
I mean, I guess if you are, if you can't have sex before you get married, then get the marriage over as quickly as possible. But 3 months, I mean, she just left a previous marriage. Like, the time it takes to recover, like the time it takes to rebuild, the time it takes to get your head together. But instead, like, immediately they're just like desperately in love. They're engaged. I mean, what is it, like a 1-month engagement, 1-month marriage? Like, what is happening?
Well, and he says that people said to them, yeah, this is like a good thing. She looks like a good choice, bro. Like, go with it. But, like William said to Harry, just take it slow. Just take it slow. And he's like, so we ran off in the loop. Yeah, well, yeah. They ran us really, really good leadership role models from the get-go.
Did they go to Las Vegas and get married by an Elvis impersonator? I don't even know.
If only. I wonder if there are Brian impersonators in Vegas now. We should just look into that.
There should be, and if not, we should invest.
Well, I mean, he's an impersonation anyway. They're all impersonating him, and I'm getting so philosophical.
But the story, I mean, the Instagramming continues, because immediately he deletes his Instagram and he reposts with a fresh statement in which he says, I'd like to apologize for my earlier comments regarding my divorce. It did not reflect the leader I am or my sincere feelings.
It absolutely did, though, Sam, and that's the thing. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I think after a 10-minute reflection, he was like, well, I want to keep running my current church because I've already left one this year. So he had to, drop back to redo the divorce note. But anyway, I was emotionally overwhelmed and angry at the highest level. Angry at the highest level. These past 2 months have been extremely exhausting. And there you go.
So the man who hears from God called his estranged wife a liar and an abuser, which could mean anything. I mean, maybe she abuses the tomato sauce, over.
Well, he's not gone with any clarity here. So, I mean, and we don't, obviously, anyone who's been abused doesn't owe us any information, but, yeah, he hasn't come in with any clarity to give us that information that is helpful to kind of put a picture together as to what's actually gone on. He says to the Christian Post, "I woke up to the post from Tony at the same time the world did, and one of the things you see in my response is an emotional response. It was out of the fuel of my anger, surprise, and shock." And again, we've had these discussions over and over again about, it's good for men to feel emotions, but in the Hillsong world, those emotions are all, anger and shock and surprise, and those emotions are not regulated or in any way kind of able to be expressed. So they get these sudden waves of "I must scream at my wife on Instagram."
I mean, sorry, I think there's a series of steps that have to be taken in order to get to that place. And the word abuse, like, that is deliberately setting a tone and yet not being specific. So we don't know if she's beating him with a wooden spoon or, forcing him to turn the music down after dark. What somebody's abuse is another, and she's a liar according to what her recently estranged husband. I mean, what would Jesus do?
And he says he's the one who's turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms. And he says the claims of infidelity and what that communicates are very inaccurate. But, he's also saying that, he's saying the claims are inaccurate. He's not saying, that they're not true.
Well, it's all been very cleverly danced around, hasn't it? All,
It's fascinating. But this was a guy who was on a meteoric rise through the church, at one point. And it says in the post, let me just go down.
What kind of unhealthy coping mechanisms? I mean, because that can be everything from, in the grips of a meth addiction to, not eating a vegetable every second day.
Exactly, or leaning too hard on Grindr, or what, it could be anything at that point.
I don't know.
It says in the Christian Post article, this, that the couple had been at times held up as an example of godly marriage at Christian conferences. And this is what annoys me, is they, things were going on with them at that time, that they were being held up as an example of a Christian perfect marriage. And it's just that lack of honesty, because if they were able to really say, listen, we've been in counseling for 7 months already, why are we on this stage being held up as an example of a really good Christian marriage?
Well,
But the lack of honesty is not there.
Yeah, well, exactly. Going to counselling doesn't mean it's not a healthy marriage, but the way that language that they use, and there's extreme terms, and God, and forever, and the church, and blah blah. And then when you find out, then suddenly they say, actually, you know what? With hindsight, we should never have done it. But they never get held to their own words.
I mean, it used to be that if you were a minister and you had a divorce or this kind of like sexual abuse, not abuse, but sexual scandal, you would at least be stepped down for a while. But, he's been off for 3 months and he's coming back to do the Christmas service. Like, to me, it just seems like they don't, if you were in the youth group and you broke up with your girlfriend, but you'd had sex, then you would be kicked out the youth group for, do you know what I mean? Like, the standards they hold other people to are so much higher than the standards they hold themselves to, because when it happens to them, it's like...
We know that all of the people that Brian threw under the bus over the 30, 40 years he was in charge of for the church, for, affairs and whatever, pregnancies outside of that, all that kind of stuff, they never got to go on a 3-month home break and then be ready. It's but look, if you were Hillsong, you've only got Christmas and Easter up your sleeve. So you'd have Elvis turn up if he'd do the job.
They're not doing Valentine's Day, so
they're not what? Sorry.
They're not. They've only got Christmas and Easter. They can't do Valentine's Day anymore.
Well,
so what are they going to do?
And can't find the right room to do it in. So Yeah,
But this is a man, I mean, this you were telling me this guy was tapped to be running. Now tell me again, something like the virtual online Hillsong mega pixel church or
well,
something.
I think this is really like way important. So, I've spoken to quite a few journalists who are like, so Hillsong, where do I start with Hillsong? And I go, okay, it's not where you start, it's where you end. So this
God, I love when you get on here and do a good scandal. Oh, my favorite kind of plotting with you.
it's getting to be par for the course, and you don't even have to wait for 30 years like we had to with Jimmy Swaggart and stuff. It's just cutting it right down. So 2.5 years ago, on the 26th of July, 2021, the New York Times put out a fantastic article called Facebook's Next Target, the Religious Experience. And they had not yet changed their name to Meta, which is, interesting, because I really wanted SHERYL SANDBERG to know what she'd signed up for. And it starts like this. Months before the mega church Hillsong opened its new outpost in Atlanta, its pastor sought advice on how to build a church in a pandemic from Facebook. The social media giant had a proposition. Sam Collier, the pastor, recorded an interview to use the church as a case study to explore how churches can go farther on Facebook. For months, Facebook developers met weekly with Hillsong and explored what the church would look like on Facebook and what apps they might create for financial giving, video capability, or live streaming. When it came time for Hillsong's grand opening in June, the church issued a news release saying it was partnering with Facebook and began streaming its services exclusively on the platform. Beyond that, Mr. Collier could not share many specifics. He had signed a non-disclosure agreement. Isn't that ironic, don't you think? They are teaching us, we are teaching them, he said. Together we are discovering what the future of church could be on Facebook. Facebook changed its name to Meta a couple of months later. But it says Facebook, which recently passed 1 trillion market capitalization, may seem like an unusual partner for a church, but the company has been cultivating partnerships with a wide range of faith communities over the past few years, from individual congregations to large denominations like the Assemblies of God and the Church of God in Christ. So this is also a love of SHERYL SANDBERG, who's she's had some personal tragedies and written about them. I think she's a little bit more religious than perhaps Zuck is. But this would change. This changes the entire everything when it's, and now with the introduction of AI, because you were telling me as well, so sorry, we were talking about how the metaverse hasn't amounted to much, but I understand they're reconfiguring, and it will.
Yeah, I think when they launched it, they were like, it's going to be huge, and then people were like, no, we don't have time to like be fully invested in something when we're doing it. We like to do stuff on the side while we're doing other things. People just love to listen or TikTok or scroll. They don't like to be like, I'm going to walk down a virtual road and go and sit in the virtual pew. If you know what I mean, like, a reel, the church that released reels and they did like a real length sermon would be, in this moment would be far more viral than a meta church.
Oh, and if it had a split screen Tetris on the side and you don't have to focus too hard. But now with all the AI paranoia, it's a little bit easier to understand where this thing could go, because it's like, well, how would you know if it's God or if it's the computer generation? And will it?
Is it the Holy Spirit or is it the Holy AI?
I wonder who's more accurate. Anyone's more accurate than a colleague.
Who will be providing the names of the interns in the future? Will it be God or will it be the AI?
I don't know who will make better choices because, I don't know where all of this has ended up, and I don't know why Sam Collier out of everybody, maybe he's the only person, who understood. So
I mean, I love the obviously, Atlanta is quite. I think Atlanta is a tech futuristic-y kind of space. So I can imagine that he would be the one to do that. But it's just fascinating that before he had a chance to really for that to take off, he's now been in, caught up in scandal as they all seem to do because it's repeating patterns. It's just constant.
It's his wife's fault. It's always the wife's fault. He was so impulsive. Although, do you remember that whole verse thing about Paul was writing to his friend Timothy in that Bible, and he says, whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Now, the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness or Instagram impulsivity, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, calling people liars and abusers, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. I don't know, I just thought I'd throw that in.
It just feels like that is the antithesis of every Hillsong pastor scandal that we have seen. It involves one of those things: love of money, or like
all the above. What about all of the above?
Or yeah, all of the above.
Quarrelsome, lover of money, given to drunkenness, and way below reproach.
I don't understand why none of these things are important to them, like in comparison to, for example, please don't be gay. Like those verses in the Bible are like so important to them. But
look
the
up there, there's gay people. Yeah. Now we're
Exactly. It's a distraction technique.
Who better than this example itself? And under the first kind of public sign of pressure, they implode. They imploded. They jumped on Instagram like they just got back from the 9th grade and they're in a bad mood. What?
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was very Gossip Girl-esque. It was very scandal.
Fantastic.
It was very Laura Lance. It was very Bobby Houston.
Who? Tony or Sam?
Well, so I think Sam was being the Bobby in this situation and just doing an Instagram reaction to what was going on around him, and Tony was I don't know, doing sort of probably the Lord's work and doing the public reveal.
I think it's very Brian Houston Twitter. 2 a.m.
Drunken Twitter.
A bottle of white. Bottle. He gets full of in vino veritas himself. The old Brian on the Twitter, he starts telling those dropping those truth bombs, whether you want to hear them.
If he does in fact end up launching his virtual church that's potentially been discussed, that he will be doing that from home and from his desk, and he'll have his whiskey bottle in the drawer, and he'll be we'll get some drunk sermons, because I think Brian Houston on sermon mode would be fascinating.
So exciting. Brian and Bobby have just recently announced they're going to have online church, which means, they can do it in half their pajamas. I don't know how is this going to work. He was so against all this online stuff during the pandemic because, you can't pump money out of people if you can't pump them into an emotional state. And that's much harder virus screen than, in a room full of sweaty, crying people that, you can feel part of.
Yeah, I mean, you can see how they can they may have to develop new cult techniques because cults can exist online, but they have to work with very different techniques because they can't do the like you say, the lights, the sweat, the dancing, the singing, all of that, stuff. So it'll have to be a very different method, but yeah, I can see some of his followers joining, and those things can still go viral online, but. I just love the idea of them doing it from home because their homes are so messy. I mean, Bobby falls down the stairs so often that I can just imagine Brian's just trying to do the sermon, and all we can hear is Bobby toppling down the stairs in the background, and and then he's swigging on his whiskey, and then there's somebody knocking on his door with the wrong key, saying, "Is this the office?" And
Where am I? Where am I again? Yes.
Live, no pre-records, please. Get online live.
But maybe they'll turn it into a Twitch stream, and they could be gaming and chatting and stuff, and just go for hours.
People could just send them points and flowers and hats and stuff like they used to on that weird video website where everyone got money from chatting to strangers. Yeah, that could be them.
They're in for a huge shock because I was told. Let me know if I'm wrong, but there are these yellow cash vans, security vans that transport money in our fair land, or at least my fair city, and they used to be outside, because there was so much money going out the back door, just bags and bags of it, that they needed a security van, and I don't think you're going to get that on your Twitch live stream.
No, and also I think the online kids will absolutely eat them up and destroy them because the online kids will not be here for any of that business. They're not interested in some old guy telling them what's going on from his home studio. I mean, I could be wrong, but I really think that they're gonna have to, I don't know how they're gonna find an online audience. It's gonna be difficult for them.
And not being nasty, not me, far from it, not in my personality, but I did notice some Christmas carols they were pumping out the other day, and there were 84 people watching, and that's got hurt and burn.
84.
They're not getting much. They weren't getting much for their sermons anymore. It's really not their space. Nobody goes, "Hey, I've got to go online. I've got to go to Hillsong."
I mean, they're so used to having their £6,500 Cartier watch and their £2,500 worth of Louis Vuitton luggage. How are they going to get that from 85 people?
Seriously, that is absolutely, that's what I'm saying. So they would be either newbies or the really old committed crew are, and you can't run. You can't be going to Nobu with that kind of spare change. It's
a luxury retreat to Cancun for 150,000 is not going to cut it from 85 donors.
And Laura, their daughter Laura, and her faithful associate husband and her husband have started their own church called Parable or something. So they'll probably clean up the nostalgic lot that are still hanging around for the second coming of Houston, resurrection, and Stone's been rolled away. They're in California now, so
we're back on Easter. It's supposed to be on Christmas.
Well, it's coming up, and it's fairly morbid Easter, but at least there's some food that's assumed to go with it.
I need to. I will have to pop off soon to go to my own Christmas party, but it's been quite a Christmas party to just be here with you once again.
Always, every day is Christmas. You. Tell me how you feel. So before you run to it, Christmas, before you go, can we just have a little because you and I have quite different experiences post church when it comes to these occasions. I'm sort of. I was thinking today, the organization required for Christmas is too much for me. I think a lot of that comes down, ornaments on trees and gravy on. No, but you're still quite fond of those kinds of traditions. Hey,
I'm desperate to hang on to the traditions. Yeah, I love them because
why is that?
I just think. these fill me with this kind of warmth of Christmas, like, and I've tried to this year to kind of cut my traditions down a lot. So uh, I bought a lot of Christmas food last year that I didn't even really like. So I was like, actually, we've got to that point now where with the cost of living crisis and the all of the, poverty that's going around and things like that. So I've really cut down this year and I'm just doing my turkey dinner and I've put up a few decorations, not too many, and I've given cards just to the people who I love the most and not sent them out to, the whole of family and friends and everyone that I've ever met in my life. So I'm kind of really trying to cut down, which I've seen a lot of people doing, and I think that's really good. But I my life has to go from sort of occasion to occasion and festival to festival because I need something to be looking forward to and something that builds me up and boosts me. So I love Christmas for that reason, even though I find it difficult. And I will go to the carol service on Christmas Eve, but I will find it difficult to be there. But I want to sing the songs. And
Why? I mean, you don't necessarily believe in the. And I'm not, I'm not attacking. I'm interested what it brings to you, because it's not bringing the spiritual reassurance that it once did, right? Am I?
Yeah, so it's not really like a sense of certainty. So it used to be you would go, you'd sing the songs, you'd be absolutely certain that Jesus was born in the manger and then he died for your sins and that you'll be going to heaven and then you'll be dancing together with the Magi and the shepherds. But for me now, it's like it's the symbolism that I love. So I love the idea of the mysterious three kings, bringing presents and bringing mystery. I love the idea of the shepherds like putting down their work and taking time off to go and just like to spend time celebrating. And I love the idea of Mary and Joseph as immigrants and things like that. So there's all these different symbols that I kind of take from the stories and you can take what I've done this year for myself is to really take Bible stories and then reapply them in ways that kind of fit into the world that are around us, if that makes sense. So I've really enjoyed doing that this year. So you can take stories of some of the characters in the Bible, like Daniel and the lion's den, for example, and then you can apply it to persecution of LGBT people in countries where they don't feel safe. And you can think about, God closing the mouth of the lions and protecting Daniel and Daniel getting out of there. And you can think about like queer Ugandan refugees and how they've escaped from the persecution in their own countries. And it's things like that for me. So it's kind of reapplying and looking at the symbols rather than going like, here's a historical document that will lead me on a path and be my golden ticket to get to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory heaven. So I don't know. Maybe that's not the right one, but I still just
one. I know.
I haven't seen the Timothy Chalamet one. I don't think I can quite face it.
Apparently, it's dreadful. Yes. Well, you were never supposed to know the background of Willy Wonka. That's the whole point of what Dahl did. But
Well, it's the mystery, isn't it? It's the mystery of Christmas, and to take that away from us by producing a prequel about Willy Wonka is, it's scandalous and sacrilege, really.
It's worse than Johnny Depp. Yeah, I watch reviews rather than films so that I can feel right. Tell me
At least the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka had an iconic bob.
Yes. And, it wasn't true to form. It wasn't Gene Wilder, but it wasn't Kylie Jenner's current boyfriend.
Maybe this is what's going to happen to Hillsong, is that there'll be like the original Gene Wilder Hillsong with all of the like weird stuff that happens, and then there'll be like the Johnny Depp Hillsong, which is like the Brian Houston one, and we've yet to see the Timothy Chalamet Hillsong. That's like that may be the one that's upcoming.
Might be the Timothy Chalamet of this one. I don't know.
I'm excited to see.
You're back in 3 months. See here, you didn't need to know, but can you? Because you take like a special interest in a area and go and research stuff too. It's fascinating because to me, I'm like, well, that's not true. So I'm not going to learn anything more about that unless you can. Whereas you'll go and look at more nuanced explanations, multiple definitions, and you been on the Three Kings one. Like, can we use your jumper that you showed me the other day as a cover art, please? It's gorgeous.
Thanks. I love that. For some reason, yeah, this Christmas I just decided I love the Magi and I would focus on them. So I got a book with kind of like art history and kind of other than the Bible book history of stories of the Magi. And I didn't realize that kind of through the ancient times, kind of like, 400 years after Jesus supposedly lived and died, they were writing about the Magi as these kind of like mysterious and almost magical characters. Like there's a version of the story where they lived in a cave and the star comes down and the star talks to them, and then they travel to meet Jesus, and then every one of the Magi goes into the cave individually and they see Jesus differently. So one sees Jesus as a king, one sees Jesus as dying, one sees Jesus like poor, and like there was all these different ways of reading the Bible back in the day. It wasn't that you used to just read it and be like, this is a historical fact. It used to be read and it would be translated into interesting versions of the story. And I think that like I still love that stuff because I'm not necessarily interested in researching was this real. I'm much more interested in saying what impact did it have on the people who read it, and also who wrote it and why, and also I just love to like look at these characters as with so much fascination because they only take up like 6 verses in the whole Bible, and yet they have entire books based around them, and they have done for thousands of years, and it's not for no reason, if that makes sense. So I still find all that stuff fascinating, and I love to just kind of delve into it. And it's almost like you would think that reading multiple versions of the same story would make it less real, but to me it somehow makes it more real through its mysteriousness. Because I think
an adaptability from the sound, but yeah, it's not rigid.
Yeah, so you don't have to go like, okay, so was Jesus born in a manger? Was he born in a cave? Was he born on 1 AD, or did they come on 8 AD? You can just go, there's lots of mystery, and it's fascinating and it's fantastic. And this time of year with the lights and the colors and the food and everything, you can just go, it's mystery. It's fascinating. It's interesting.
And yeah, that's it's a completely unique approach of I mean, everybody should have their own approach that they want, that they're happy with, and you buy, really like out there clothing to celebrate the research that you're doing. How did they meet these three kings? We three kings bearing gifts.
There's lots of different versions. There's one version where they all live in a cave and they do like bathing ceremonies together. There's another where they come together for, like, they represent like the 3 different continents, and they just happen to meet. And there's other versions that say they're descendants of Daniel and people like that. Not direct descendants, because he probably was a lost my train of thought. But
why did they all the way to see this baby? What were they going to do once they took like their pics and selfies and posted and stuff? Why'd they go and follow that star all the way? Couldn't they wait?
So obviously some versions think that they are they came from kind of like future Babylon, and they had all the stuff from the Jewish tradition, and that's where they came. Other people.
What? So this is a Doctor Who episode. Okay, go. Yeah.
No, I mean, I can't remember where Babylon was or what it turned into by the time they went the trouble.
Okay, yeah. It was a bonium.
Was it Constantinople? Was it Istanbul? Was it Constantinople? I can't really remember.
No, but why did they set off? Couldn't they have sent a message boy to say, yes, he's been born? And I mean, you won't see Herod doing something like bearing frankincense to go see a newborn, or Pontius Pilate. They went.
Some versions of the story say they had this ancient script that was handed down to them by Abraham's son Seth, and that they'd kept it in a cave up until that time, and no one could open it apart from the baby when they got there. So there's that version. So no one really knows why they went there. Even, they're only really in Matthew, and he doesn't say. So they just sort of showed up, but they haven't always been used for the best reasons, because they have been used in anti-Semitic ways at times to kind of say, like, oh, the Jewish people rejected Jesus, but the kings came and accepted Jesus, so Jesus now belongs to not, God now doesn't belong to the Jews, but belongs to other people. So they're not always good characters to follow, but there's different ways of understanding them, and it makes them interesting.
I just can't see Charles III doing something like that, much less having two friends to go with. But sorry.
I had two friends to travel with, like it would be fantastic to just have the close bond. I mean, yeah, well, I don't know. Never mind. Take that out. I don't want to sound like I've got no friends, please, Jesus.
Why? Well, no. What if that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? All right, I'll let you go, but tell me, where will you be found on Christmas Day? What will you do?
I'm helping out in the morning at a community Christmas, and then I will be making my own Christmas dinner at home, and I'll be watching the Muppet Christmas Carol, of course, and as much Christmas content as I can, and the new Doctor Who, of course. Absolutely, so excited for that.
You are. But that is it. Oh,
now I'm going out dancing, so I'm going to go out dancing for the rest of the evening, and we will catch up soon. In the new year, there's going to be even more revelations and even more fantastic things in 2024.
And the scandals that we can look forward to if people are going to just start rolling it up on Instagram and not caring.
The more people just drop it on Instagram, the better, really. If you've got a scandal, just get it dropped on Instagram.
Yeah, don't wait till
Hillsong and chat about it, please.
Forget that advisory whole thingy and restoration stuff. Just go for broke. Happy Christmas to you then. I do like a scandal.
Peace on earth and goodwill to all.
Well, to most, I mean, that's... Have a good night. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Mwah.
Mwah.
It is such a shame that we have to limit the talking about other people to the stuff that's kind of out in the public domain. Don't know if you've ever noticed, but those fundamentally churchy type communities really don't talk about anything else apart from other people. Maybe the church picnic or something, but it's not like they're talking philosophy or current affairs. It's just all about... But that's not what we do here at Leaving Hillsong. And I have mentioned to you that we were to speak with a criminal law specialist regarding the verdict of BCH. And that interview did take place this week. And then I was like, hang on, it's not really much of a Christmassy topic, is it? When people are on holidays and they're having a relaxing time. It's a stunning interview, and I'll bring it to you as soon as possible. It's cleared a lot of things up, and it's fantastic. But we've got all these weird days between Christmas and New Year's to get through, and then I don't know. I like news. It's an opportunity to lie to yourself and really mean it. Because I see Christmas as more of an opportunity to reflect on all the ways in which you failed compared to other people. Well, that's what the Woolworths ads do for me. I want you to do something for me over the next couple of weeks, please, even if you do it for me. For me. I ask so little. Would you look after yourselves, please, because you matter. If you could drive perhaps 5 miles under the speed limit, I would sleep a lot better. You're a wonderful group of people, and it's a fantastic, resilient, strong community of people who have had to make very, very tough decisions and endless sacrifices. I want you to stay safe over the holiday period, please. Because we got good content next year, you don't want to miss out. And how would we tell your dog that you're not coming home? That's one reason to stay safe on the roads. I hope you get a little rest and relaxation during this twilight zone period between Christmas and New Year's. Strange days indeed. I hope you got good gifts and that the ones that you don't like are easily and discreetly returnable or regiftable. Keep leaving Hillsong, and we will talk very soon. Bye. Have fun.